All right, guys, we have got our preview here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Over under 8.5 is their season win total. Interesting team. They go through spurts here that are where they look good and where they don't look good. Last year, unfortunately, it was the latter on the back half of the season. Had an 8-3 record. Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, he gets some other injuries, and they kind of fade down the stretch and lose out on the division to the Texans. Not what you want to see, but I still think they're a little bit underrated. I think there's talent here, and we'll jump right on into it. Doug Peterson, the head coach, solid. Maybe not exactly where I thought he was a few years ago, but still very solid. Him and Press Taylor run a decent offense here. Ryan Nielsen coming in on defense. He's going to have a lot of work to do fixing this because they are a little bit devoid of talent on defense, if I say so, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll start in the offense, and we'll start at quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, good player, top 15, 16, 17 kind of quarterback. Still has things he has to work on, but all around really solid, and I think, he's had a weird career so far. I mean, last year, as I said, they were 8-3, and then he gets hurt, and, a lot of that falls on his shoulder while his ankle can barely turn. And, he had that first year, which was pretty much an empty year in development, which isn't ideal either. So he may have been slightly overpaid for what he is, but I still think there's potential to unlock here with Trevor. Mac Jones, interesting. He's a backup, highly drafted. Not much more you can ask for in that position. Running back, Travis Etienne. I expect him to be the workhorse here, the every down kind of guy. He's a good running back, top 15 or maybe top 10, 11, 12 kind of guy. More like solid, can get you yards after catch, yards after contact. He's a good catcher of the football as well. So really like Etienne. They have Tank Bigsby in there. I'm not expecting him to get a lot out here. Ernest Johnson is someone I actually like, but again, I'm not expecting a ton of action out of Dearness. I think this is really Etienne's room, and he's going to get a really large bulk of the carries. Wide receiver room is interesting. Christian Kirk, I think he's underrated. I really like Christian Kirk. Gabe Davis is, a body at this point. I'm not in love with Gabe Davis, but he can do a job for sure, stretching the field and stuff. Brian Thomas is a really interesting draft pick. I like the look of him, and we'll see if he can hit the ground running here. If he does, the offense right from the get-go looks like it can be pretty decent. Then you get Devin Duvernay, who is okay as a body, in the wide receiver room, but he's really at his best punt returning, kick returning. You can get some extra. He's probably one of the better ones in the league, probably top 2 or 3 in terms of returning kicks in the league. So a really nice piece to have. Tim Jones, Parker Washington are just bodies to fill out. So I like the top 3, and if you add in Evan Ingram, I suppose as a pass catcher, quote-unquote, because he doesn't line up at tight end a ton. I really like the pass-catching unit here, as we were talking about Evan Ingram here at tight end. Luke Farrell, Brenton Strange are more traditional tight ends, I suppose, but Evan Ingram's a really nice name to have, and he's really come into his own down here in Jacksonville. Offensive line is okay. There's a lot of high-end picks here, a lot of first- and second-round draft picks. They haven't really come together quite yet where you'd like them to be, but, they add Mitch Morris as center. The rest is kind of the same, and you're hoping that some of these guys kind of grow. Anton Harrison, hoping he takes a step. Walker Little has talent, though he'll be behind Cam Robinson, who's pretty good. Ezra Cleveland, Brandon Scherf, who's a known name. So it's an interesting offensive line, but probably not as good as the names as you would look at it and go, wow, a lot of early draft picks, first and second round guys, just not all come together just yet. So that's probably the weakest unit on the offense. Defensive line, there's potential here. It's okay. Josh Allen staying is really big for this team. He's their best pass rusher by a mile, and he's very, very good. Trayvon Walker is interesting. He reminds me a lot of Kayvon Thibodeau. He had double-digit sacks last year too. Their down-to-down pressure rate, though, is really not there. They're not causing, problems on every down, but they're cleaning up at a crazy rate. So, his sacks will drop, or he'll have to up his pressures quite a bit, and he'll just be a better player for it, even if he doesn't get to that number. So, one of the two will happen. We'll see what happens. But in my opinion, he still needs to take a step. Arik Armstead is a really nice addition here. On the interior, Robertson Harris is okay. Hamilton's okay. There's not a ton in there either, but adding someone really good on the interior makes it less of a hole. So, so there's some talent here on the D-line. Needed to all mesh and take a step forward for the defense to be a little bit better. Linebacker unit's interesting. Devin Lloyd grew a lot last year. He's excellent in run defense. His pass coverage is a little bit spotty still. If he can really get his pass coverage under control and get that to like an average level, he'd be a really, really good linebacker. Because as we said, the run grade is excellent. Makes his tackles, but need that coverage a little bit better. Foyesade Oluwakun, incredible name there. Top 25 linebacker last year. So this is a good room, as we said. And it's a Devin Lloyd good coverage here from being a really great room at linebacker. Secondary is probably the worst unit here. They bring in Darnell Savage, probably going to play safety, can play a little bit of nickel. Andre Sisco is solid. Antonio Johnson's okay too. So a good safety room. Corner is where the issues are. Darby comes in. He's okay. Nothing great at this stage of his career. Tyson Campbell had a really bad year last year. Like a 50 PFF grade too. And it just wasn't great. And, playing against the ones, it's bound to happen if you're not at that level, but he needs to take a step, and everything after that is really not good. So this is the weakest unit, weakest room on the defense, on the team, pretty much, is corner. So they're going to need these guys to step up and stay healthy. This is one injury away from being the worst secondary in the league, theoretically. So, so it's not a good room, and that is the biggest downfall of this team right now, would be corner. There's some interesting spots. We really like the pass catchers, like the running back, like the quarterback. Offensive line's kind of iffy. Secondary, as we said, is not good. Potentially the D-line is okay, but you'd like it to be a little bit better. So it's an interesting team to kind of evaluate week to week. We can look at the schedule where it starts out really, really difficult. At Miami, home to Cleveland, at Buffalo, at Houston is a brutal, brutal, brutal start here. What are you looking for there? 1 win in 3. 2, if you have a really good 4-week stretch out of the gate. But it is a lot to get through. Then you have Indianapolis, at Chicago, home to New England. That's a 3-game stretch you want 2 or 3 wins from. Green Bay at home, at Philadelphia is tough. Then Minnesota at Detroit before your bye. So it is not an easy schedule here. There are a couple winnable games in there, and theoretically, if you're a good team, you're kind of in all these games, but they're very, very difficult. And after the bye, Houston at Tennessee, the Jets, another tough stretch, and then Las Vegas, Tennessee, and at Indiana. So you're probably, as a playoff team, if you want to be there or get over your win total of 8.5, you kind of want to be at 5 or 6, obviously, going into that last stretch. But for a playoff team, you're going to need a lot more than that. You're going to need the 3 wins, Indy, at Chicago, New England, Minnesota at home. You're going to need to split with your division. You got Las Vegas that you're hoping to beat. And then at the front end of the schedule, Chicago, New England, Miami, Cleveland. So there are winnable games there if you split with your division. And, there's potential to definitely get over your win total. I'm not going to play the win total because I'm so scared of the secondary. The secondary scares the life out of me. But we do have a bet because I think the defense could theoretically get carved apart. I think the offense will be running up and down the field, and we got to play on that. Trevor Lawrence over 21.5 touchdowns at -126, a $1.50 bet. As I said, I like this. Etienne's a good back, but he doesn't get a ton of goal line work. I like the wide receivers here. Brian Thomas is potentially a guy who can go up and go get it in the end zone type guy. And as I said, I think in theory, this defense could give up a lot of points, and this could be a shootout. That week 1 game versus Miami is kind of in that vein, is what it feels like. So Trevor Lawrence over 21.5 TDs. I think they're throwing the ball a lot more. I think he's healthier, obviously, this year than he was at the back end of last year. And I think they get over that number. And that is our preview for the Jacksonville Jaguars.